I'm going because I got some stuff. All right, guys, good evening. Welcome to the show. There has been some scandal this week in Michigan. We have to get to it. It is a big story. Ladies and gentlemen, coming out of Detroit, Lions receiver Jameson Williams did a heinous act. He put a McFlurry on his hamburger after winning in San Diego, and he is proud of it. And
Oh
people are
no,
calling for him to be traded. And you know what? I personally
no,
100%
No,
agree.
no.
So there is
I,
nothing else that has happened in Michigan that has been as big as that this week. No doubt about it. I'm Steve Rabinowitz.
I'm Jay Kaplan, and sadly, there's other things that are going on in Michigan that we're contractually obligated to talk about.
and I'm Anthony Strait. I would take a McFlurry over on a burger over mayonnaise and coffee any day of the week.
Hell
Okay,
yes.
let's not have this conversation
Or
tonight.
Will Levis. Jesus, he never did anything wrong to you guys. Welcome to On the Sports Lines. It's a
Has given him an
hodgepodge.
advertisement at this point?
Oh
Has Hellman's
God.
given him an endorsement deal?
No. Let's
Hey,
stop that.
Rabbi,
Stop.
before we get into the madness, can we just congratulate Garrett Cole on his very first signing award?
Absolutely.
Yes, congratulations.
And the
Well
very
deserved.
Well deserved.
and the very rare combo today of two unanimous MVPs in Shohei Ohtani in the AL and Ronald Acuna in the NL. Both, by the way, beating out a pair of teammates
Yeah, I would say
for that
this.
honor in
Well,
second and third, which I
yeah.
actually thought
I
was
would
kind
say
of
this.
funny.
I would say this as a Mets fan. I can't be more than happy for Acuna because remember we both saw the awful injury he had 2 years ago. He actually missed the Braves World Series
Mhm.
run, but to see him come back and have an MVP season, great guy. Obviously, his brother is a part of the Mets organization, but a great player and well deserved.
Hey, a line
Oh,
I've invoked many a time, and we've discussed the national pastime. How can you not be romantic about baseball?
well, this is a show that Carissa Thompson has reported always stays on track. So how could it be fake? All right. So let's start with our main story tonight and we refer to it. So comedian John Oliver called the issues that Trump had with Russia while he was still president in 2019 and dubbed it by the phrase stupid Watergate. Tonight, we have stupid Spygate. Do I want to talk about Michigan football? Absolutely not. Do I want to talk about another NCAA investigation? Absolutely not. Do I want to talk about another Spygate scandal? Absolutely not. But in the name of our Lord, year 2023, here we go. I'm going to try to do the TLDR version of this. You know the situation. Michigan employed a man by the name of Connor Stallions. People don't know to what extent, and he was a lower level employee. He went to a ton of different stadiums, Big Ten and CFP contenders combined, reportedly, and eventually taped their sidelines illegally. Not good. Stallions got fired. Michigan was invested by both the NCAA and the Big Ten, with a little bit of whining from pretty much everybody in the Big Ten themselves, because, as Jay says, bunch of Michigan haters. The Big Ten commissioner and I believe former CBS producer Tony Petiti put a little expedited punishment to Michigan, banning Harbaugh from the sidelines for the last 3 games of the season. That will stick as of today, as Harbaugh took off the possibility of a restraining order. He will be back for a possible Big Ten title game, which is a very big possibility, and he will be back for a possible CFP. By the way, this all didn't matter against Penn State because Penn State's offense is shit. So that keep that in mind. Jay, put
Yeah.
this into perspective if you can.
I'll do my best, and I guys I'll warn everybody up front. Everyone knows I'm a Michigan fan, but I'm going to try and walk the line between college football analyst and Michigan fan here. So let me be clear up front. I do not condone cheating of any kind. Doing anything and everything you can within the rules to get an advantage on your opponent, absolutely. Do I think now fired team analyst Connor Stallions was breaking the rules regarding in-person filming and scouting of upcoming Michigan opponents? There's a preponderance of circumstantial evidence that he did. Tickets to opposing teams' games were purchased in his name. There's apparently video showing people in those seats filming the teams that were on Michigan's schedule. There's the photo of a guy in sunglasses dressed in Central Michigan coaches gear on their sideline during the Michigan State game, who apparently not on the Central Michigan staff. All that taken together would seem to meet the definition of where there's smoke, there's fire, especially when added to the things that I read on Stallions, where he comes across as a bit of a nutcase with regards to his obsessive fandom of the Michigan football program. The guy had a manifesto about he'd eventually wind up coaching the team someday. Anytime you put someone's name in
just like a booster, by the way, in any other school.
Hey, I'm just saying, anytime you put, manifesto next to someone's name, take it how you will. All right. That being said, the way the Big Ten, especially new Commissioner Tony Petitti, handled this was to borrow from the headline by the Athletic senior college football writer Ari Rosserman, sloppy, rushed, and pleases nobody. That about sums it up. Petitti decided not to wait until the NCAA concluded its investigation into the matter, but instead chose to cave into the pressure from the other schools who ranted and raged about this assault on the competitive integrity of the games and handed down what amounted to a Gibbs slap and a grounding of Michigan head coach Jim Harbaugh. You can go to class and play with the other kids Monday through Friday while you're at school, but come Saturday, you're grounded and confined to your room, young man. Are you kidding me? Really? Really? Okay, think about these still unanswered questions that the NCAA is investigating. Let's just start with these three. Did Harbaugh design the plan and or have knowledge of where Stallions was getting his information? Were any of the assistant coaches and or players involved? Stallions has been emphatic in his claims that neither Harbaugh, the coaches, nor any of the players were involved in any way, though he has yet to put that on the record with the NCAA. How much of a competitive advantage did Michigan get from this? Did they win games they wouldn't have as a result of that advantage? Other people on staffs in other universities, the Big Ten, of kind of who are tasked with, stealing signs, if you will, legally, are the responses from those guys are varied. Some say, hell yes. Some say, minimal. Did the Wolverines just walk up to the line on gamesmanship rules but not cross it? Or were they cheating with a big honking C? Again, we all know the NCAA investigations are going to take time. How can you possibly hand down punishment until all of the facts come out? Just like anyone else in our society, Harbaugh and Michigan football deserve the full due process and let the actual chips fall where they may based on how the investigation plays out. Look, I get it. Harbaugh's the commanding officer, and commanding officers are responsible for all actions taken by those under his command, whether he knew about them or not. So the ruler to the knuckles will come down on Harbaugh, and did, just because this all happened on his watch. But, this is an overwhelmed parent pacifying screaming children just to get them to stop screaming. You think SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey would have handled it this way if it was Alabama? Hell fracking no. About the only thing Petitti got right, in my opinion, though I'm not alone in it, is that he didn't throw the current players or the program under the bus by vacating victories or banning them from postseason play. I would have been interested to see how a Michigan judge would have ruled on the university's filing of a temporary restraining order against the discipline Petitti handed down before Harbaugh elected to serve out the suspension. I will be interested to see how things shake out with Michigan's claim that other schools were guilty of violating the Big Ten sportsmanship policy too. They informed the conference and the NCAA at the beginning of November that staff members at Ohio State, Rutgers, and Purdue shared information about the Wolverine signals before the 2022 Big Ten championship game. So far, Petitti has ignored that one. Here's hoping the NCAA won't.
Well, to be fair,
let me finish. In case you were wondering how Ohio State fans feel about Harbaugh not being on the sidelines by the time they roll into the big house on November 25th, Wasserman put the question out there in the form of a Twitter poll on November 10th. He got 3,050 votes, and 66.5% of them said no, they wouldn't want Harbaugh suspended for the game. Maybe you listened to the wrong folks, Mr. I've been on the job for 5 minutes, Big Ten commissioner.
Two things on your rants that I want to kind of rebut on before we do it. Number one, looking more into the situation with this giving the actually three things. Number one, it doesn't matter how much of a competitive advantage they get. If you look back at Spygate, that was basically, and if you look back into Deflategate, that was for the AFC Championship. That game was essentially a 40-point blowout, and that was still violating the spirit of the game. The sportsmanship rule has nothing to do with, did this affect them this much, or did this affect them this much? If it affected them, it violates the rule. That's all I'm saying about that at number one.
And that's all well and good, but it's a question of, this is a case in my mind of a rush to judgment to appease.
It is. But that's not what you said was not part of the investigation.
Children.
But number two, also going back to the sign stealing, what is being accused here is literally zooming in on a sideline and stealing their signs. What is going on in the other case of this scenario, and I read the article on that, is something that is a competitive disadvantage, but not illegal. So that's something that's about that. So you're comparing apples with mandarin oranges almost.
Well, no, not necessarily, Rabbi, because like I said, the evidence is circumstantial.
It is, but
the tickets are in his name. Fine. There are people sitting in those seats with supposedly with video at them showing iPhones. They don't have those phones, so they don't know what video was actually being recorded. That's what I mean about it.
I know, but what's being accused on both sides, from what is seeming in that rant, makes it seem like, oh, why isn't this being investigated when this is being investigated? And the honest
all I'm saying is that this is a rush to judgment. If the
I know it's a rush to judgment. That I completely understand, which brings me to number three. And we've always accused the NCAA, even on this show, of dragging their feet when it comes to other stuff. Look at how and what would happen if Harbaugh decided, and I don't think this is going to happen anymore because it doesn't look like he has NFL interest. What if Harbaugh fled the scene and did know about this? And now you're punishing the school, or you're not going to punish anybody? What are you going to do? Give Harbaugh a show clause penalty? Pete Carroll left UFC after all the trauma happened, and he's probably never going to step foot in college football again. We talked about this before. We understand the rush to judgment, but there has to be a fine line on, and this was too quick. I completely understand, but there has to be a fine line on why does the NCAA get 3 years to do something to when. And that's the thing that we talked about. This is setting a new precedent.
And that's look, I agree. Yeah, I agree with you that the NCAA has a propensity to drag its heels in the name of what they call thoroughness. But you know what? The difference is it's one extreme or the other. It's and this is the problem, is that in not wanting to wait for the extreme of how long, the turtle's pace that NCAA investigations take, which is not cool. They went the extreme in the opposite direction, which is also not cool. That's where I stand on that.
I just wanted to
deserves the punishment. Yeah, and that's fine. The question now is what's going to be interesting for me now that Harbaugh has accepted his suspension, just like he did at the beginning of the year. It'll be interesting to see what kind of punishment is the NCAA going to hand down if it ultimately determines what that it's guilt across the board. What do you do now? Well, how do you handle it after that? You're going to suspend him again once their findings become official?
Well, that's going to go more to the school in that situation. That's kind of sort of like how and we need to get to Anthony here because I think no one wants to hear us two talk all day. It's something more of sort of like, no. You're
you get to say your piece, Ant.
It's more of like what the NCAA does after a self-imposed suspension. And that's how I'm treating this, because the Big Ten is a lower level to the all-being knowledge, Anthony, that is the NCAA. So what do you think about all of this? I know you're a neutral person. You kind of did a little more research on this week. We and Jake can give dissertations to each other, apparently, of how this is going on, whether we like to or not. But as someone who's learned about this, what are you thinking about all of this that's going on?
Well, those 3 days that stood out to me. I mean, anytime a guy writes a 600-page manifesto and you don't think that's a red flag before you hire him, something's wrong here. I was looking at, I looked at the link you sent me because I was a little behind. I didn't quite know what's going on. And I read, first off, I want his salary to afford 30 tickets to any college football game. I can afford one, and I have a great 401k. And I can't afford to fly myself out to Happy Valley to see anybody right now. But clearly, I don't understand how nobody thought this was suspicious behavior. That's the one thing that caught me off guard. It's like, wait a minute. He's buying how many tickets to games that are not even involving, one, the team he's associated with, and two, schools that may or may not cross paths with Michigan down the line. And that's the one thing that kind of brought out to me. Whether if it was like when in the University of Michigan, that no one picked this up as, hey, this is Frank's peculiar behavior. Is anybody looking into this? That's number one. Number two, we don't know. Obviously, we don't know if Jim Harbaugh had anything to do with it, but I think what the punishment is that no one tried to stop it. If there was some information or somebody knew what was going on. And I think that's what the punishment is more coming from, outside the fact that, yeah, other schools complained and complained about it. Number three, Michigan, you are not a victim, okay?
Oh, no.
Cheating is cheating, all right? I said it with the Astros. I said it with the Patriots. It does not matter if you're saying everyone else is doing it. You are the idiots who got caught. That is plain and simple.
No,
so
he is the idiot that got caught, by the way. It's not you are the idiots.
Yeah,
he is the idiot that got caught.
And
but I have to say this because the Rick Flares, and look, I get it. You're speaking up for your alma maters if you're Charles Woodson and Desmond Howell. I understand that. But no, you do not get to paint yourself as the victim. Harbaugh, you don't get to call your school America's team under a cheating scandal, right? Do anybody look at the Patriots as America's team when they got caught not once but twice in a cheating scandal? Do anybody look at the Houston Astros as America's team after all this time? No. And look, and
they have been 6 straight ALCSs.
Yeah, but here's the thing with Michigan: you are a very good school, a very good team. You don't even cheat. You're living better than 99.9% of the Big Ten by yourself without even trying. Maybe Ohio State is on your level. Penn State offense stinks, okay? Do you really need to cheat to beat any of those teams right about now? You've been to back-to-back college football playoff semifinals. You don't need this. What the hell?
Yeah,
that's the thing that upset me the most. Like with the
I get that, Ant.
You're too good to even
I get that.
Something like this happen to you.
But here's the thing. Again, no one has proved that anything that Stallions may or may not have acquired, and if he did, he definitely acquired it illegally. There is no proof as of yet that any of that information was used by Michigan in any game they played. That's the other thing. This is what I mean about the whole due process. Okay, that's why the investigation needs to be played out. And I will tell you right here again, and since this is being recorded, Rabbi can play it back for us down the road. If it turns out that this is as bad as everyone is claiming it is, if the culpability is as far-ranging as people are saying it is, I will tell you right now, I will have no problem. Jim Harbaugh should get fired. I will have no problem with them getting docked scholarships or anything else that the NCAA chooses to rain down on the University of Michigan if they are, in fact, as culpable and as guilty as everyone is claiming they are. But as of right now, no one has shown any shred of actual evidence of this. It's a whole lot of smoke, and there may be fire, but we don't know yet.
Yeah, I'll close my thought with this, and I go back to my WLSU days because I did a game where Hofstra was playing a home game, and I remember specifically in the third quarter picking up Hofstra's offensive signals. I'm in the press box and I can see this, and I'm watching with my own 2 eyes. I'm thinking to myself, well, if I can see it, someone on the field on the other side can possibly pick this up because.
But that's legal.
Yeah, and it's legal.
Yeah, because you're seeing it, not necessarily taping it.
Yeah, there's a difference between that and someone in the stands with an iPhone specifically recording the sideline and recording coaches throwing up hand signals to the players, and then who knows if they're sending it through the iCloud or whatever the case may be. There's a difference between gamesmanship and possibly cheating that I think people need to understand. This is the difference between being able to dissect the play signals when you're watching it mid-game and recording it and sending it to someone else. And apparently he had a very extensive network of people
Allegedly.
doing it for him, allegedly. And I think that's the difference.
Okay.
That's the big difference.
It's a question of did they walk up
and people
the line,
need to,
or did they
and I think
obliterate
people
it?
didn't understand that. And I think, and that's the smart people at the University of Michigan who understand that there's a difference between the two, which is why it upset me that they were trying to, that some alumni were trying to paint the school as victims of this.
Okay.
And it's like, no, you know
Victims
better than
only
that.
of a rush to judgment. That's all.
All I'm gonna say is this about stupid Spygate, because it really is fucking stupid Spygate. Jim Harbaugh is standing to make the most out of this in Michigan and is about to arise to Schembechler status, especially when the basketball fans go, free Jim Harbaugh on Monday night, like he was being imprisoned. He's losing he's leaving, he's not on the sideline for 3 games.
That's a little much.
That the team basically putting out just statements on X saying that all of the time, and the coach, the assistant coach, basically going into a Emmy Award-winning speech on how much Jim Harbaugh means in this life.
Oh, that was beautiful.
Rabbi, I'll grant you everything up until the last part of that. Do not minimize how Sharon Moore feels about Jim Harbaugh, okay? And don't go down the road that some people are claiming that, that's just for show. Those two
I
guys,
never said it was for show.
I never said it was show. I just thought it was a great speech.
Don't diminish his feelings and that relationship. Don't go there. You don't know. You're not in that.
I understand. Neither is any of us.
I think it's a great speech.
I'm going to move on. I'm going to move on.
I'm it's a great speech, but in spite of, I mean, obviously he did whatever he said before the game. Definitely inspired the team. That's for sure. But after the game, like I said, I'm quite sure you have a great relationship. I thought Clapper was a great speech. I'm not making fun of it.
You know what I like to talk about with college football?
I wish the Giants had that kind of speech.
Yes, I'd actually like to talk about games, guys. Now we head to the actual games. Yes. We will see the CFP Final Four, by the way, decided in just 2 weeks. Merry Christmas, everyone. Get to shopping. So let's talk about some of the final games that will decide who those Final Four teams will be. We're only going to talk about the next 2 weeks, by the way. We know Alabama and Georgia is coming up in the SEC Championship. If Alabama doesn't get suspended, apparently, because no one would ever do that to the SEC, according to Jay. So we'll talk about other stuff. Jay, the big game is coming up where we actually get to see Michigan play football and maybe throw more than 7 passes during a game. How is this game going to change the landscape of the college football playoff? That game is happening in 9 days.
Yeah. And you know what? Honestly, guys, this is the only type of college football conversation I really want to have. So once again, the game will likely determine not only who faces Iowa in the Big Ten title game, but who represents the conference in the CFP. Number 3, Michigan, 10-0, 7-0 in the conference, will be favored to beat number 1 Ohio State, 10-0, 7-0 in the conference when the Buckeyes visit Ann Arbor on Thanksgiving Saturday. And if the Wolverines streak extends to 3 in a row, they'll have a pretty good chance to compete for the national title. I'm not going to go any further down the rabbit hole. That's Harbaugh's suspension. Said all I'm going to say on the matter in that last segment. I think we all have. Both teams have what could be classified as trap games this season, with Ohio State hosting a 27.5-point underdog 5-5 Minnesota team that Michigan waxed 52-10 back on October 7th. And the Wolverines are looking for the program's 1,000th football victory against the 6-4 Maryland team that Ohio State waxed 37-17 on that same October Saturday. Trying to get that 1,000th win would have been plenty of motivation with Harbaugh on the sidelines. Him not being there is just more sauce for the goose. The Terps also come in with a defense that allowed 51 points to the same Penn State team that could barely complete a pass against both Ohio State and Michigan. With all that as prologue, here's some of my early thoughts on the game. Start with the Wolverines. Michigan finally got a chance to prove that it's a good team with a win over an elite defense in a tough environment. Granted, as Anthony said, 10th-ranked Penn State's offense was so bad that it resulted in head coach James Franklin firing his OC after the game. But this game gave us plenty of insight about Michigan. After relying on a much improved and highly efficient passing game for the first 3 quarters of the season, the Wolverines showed that they hadn't forgotten how to run the ball and dominate a game by doing so. Blake Corum went for a season-high 145 yards on 26 carries, 5.6 a carry, 2 touchdowns, pacing a rushing attack that put up 227 yards against one of the best rushing defenses in the nation and averaged 4.9 yards a carry. Corum reminded all of us that he can still run the ball for more than 5 yards a pop. Quarterback J.J. McCarthy threw only 8 passes all game and none that made the stat sheet in the second half. The only one he threw in the second half resulted in a defensive pass interference penalty. He completed 7 of those 8 for just 60 yards as Michigan ran the ball on all 28 of its offensive plays in the second half, the ones that counted. It worked against the Nittany Lions, who didn't cross midfield until late in the game when they had fallen behind 24-9 and made a late touchdown drive to make the final score somewhat competitive at 24-15. In doing so, they became the first team to make the Wolverines defend a play inside their own 10-yard line. Chances are we won't see a repeat of that type of offensive play calling against the Buckeyes. Not saying McCarthy will have to put the ball up 37 times like he did against Purdue. And I don't think we'll see the 252 to 278 run pass yardage split we saw in last year's win over the Buckeyes. But I think the Wolverines would take the 191 to 241 yardage split and the 33 to 23 play split, run versus pass, they had in the win over Minnesota. Ohio State has a secondary that can match up with Michigan's playmakers. And if they can contain McCarthy, then the Buckeyes have a chance. Keep an eye on how Michigan moves the pocket to put McCarthy in position to use his legs, which can open up throwing lanes downfield rather than going with straight drop back passes. For the Buckeyes, everything with this offense starts with wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr., who might be the best player in college football. 59 catches, 1,063 yards. It's 106.3 per game. 18 yards a catch, 12 scores. That resume screams Biletnikoff Award and should also get him a trip to New York once the season is over. In a 38-3 win over Michigan State, he accounted for the first 3 touchdowns of the game, 2 in the air, 1 on the ground. Put up his fifth 100-plus receiving yard game in the last 6. Ohio State's found its groove offensively, pairing with a defense that is among the nation's best. It's helped that the Buckeyes have gotten healthier as the season has gone on. And if they can peak 2 weeks in Ann Arbor, they're going to be a nightmare for whomever they play in this CFP. Yes, I'm projecting that if they beat the Wolverines in the Big Ten, the Big Ten West champ will be no match for them in the conference title game. Biggest concern for Ryan Day's squad ahead of the matchup with Michigan, run defense. Tommy Eichenberg should be back. His return will allow Ohio State to rotate Cody Simon and Steel Chambers instead of having to play both at the same time. And they'll very much need the senior linebacker against a revitalized Michigan run game. The Buckeyes linebackers have had some issues being either gap assignments since Eichenberg has been out. They can't afford that against Blake Corum and company. The safeties have stepped up to produce tackles, but Corum and Donovan Edwards against the safety in the open field, that's trouble for Ohio State. On offense, quarterback Kyle McCord has progressed nicely as the season has gone on, having Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka. Rabbi, pronounce this for me. Egbuka? Yeah?
Yes, Emeka Egbuka.
and tight end Cade Stover to throw to makes it a little easier. He's second in the Big Ten in completion percentage, passing efficiency, passing yards per game, and he's third in passing touchdowns, 12th in the nation in passing efficiency. Leads in offense is 19th in the nation in yards per play. Michigan's defense will be his biggest test of the season. The Wolverines are 4th in the nation in pressure rate per True Media at 43.2%. They're also among the best in the nation against the run. They allow just 1.18 yards before contact per rush, good for 16th. Ohio State averages 1.82 yards before contact on offense. But it has gone over that mark in the past 2 weeks, 3.08 against Rutgers, 1.85 against Michigan State. At 2 of the Buckeyes' 3 best rushing games of the season, they put up 2.1 yards before contact against Purdue. Ohio State, like Michigan, has seemingly found their run game of late, but their offense has to win the battle of the trenches in order to stay on schedule, which gives them a better chance to use any advantage their skill position players may have in individual matchups against the Wolverines. Here's a little interesting tidbit I came across when researching this game, guys. Never before in the 26-year BCS CFP era have 5 power conference teams, Ohio State, Georgia, Michigan, Florida State, and Washington, made it through 10 games undefeated. That'll change no later than Thanksgiving Saturday. I never bought into the Michigan hasn't played anyone, so we can't really know how good they are narrative. It's not easy to win every week in this sport by any margin, and the Wolverines have won each of their first 9 games by at least 24. If they win these next 2 games against Maryland and Ohio State, they'll have a case to move from number 3 to number 1 in the CFP rankings. Ohio State can make the same case if they beat Minnesota and Michigan. There's a reason it's called the games, guys. The stakes are always high, and this year's edition is no different.
Ohio State is number 2, by the way. Georgia did move back into number 1 this week, so it'll be 2 versus 3 coming up at the Big House. Very excited to see that game, just because JJ McCarthy might throw more than 8 passes. That could be a very big thing. I
think
have a feeling that's the case.
Whatever FanDuel or whatever app you use on your phone, Rabbi, whatever the odds are on,
not going to be 8.
Take the over on 8.
It's not going to be that you'll get no money on. Anthony, Georgia is the number 1 team in the country. Georgia is now fully restocked again, and Tennessee represents the final kind of sorta test before we get to before they get to Atlanta and face the Crimson Tide. So talk about Georgia, Tennessee. That's coming up this weekend.
Well, here's the thing with Georgia, okay? They have their spot in the SEC championship game already wrapped up. The SEC East is pretty much got a ribbon put on it. But here's the thing: it's not a meaningless game by no means. It's kind of like a pseudo trap game for Georgia, even though Tennessee is coming off a really, really bad game, which I'll get to in a moment. Georgia has a chance to make history. They've won since the end of 2021. They've won 27 consecutive games. So a win this week will actually tied them for the longest winning streak in the history of the SEC. Alabama actually set that record twice between 1978 and 80 and 1991 and 1993. So there was something to play for. And if you're in the Georgia Bulldogs, besides possibly avoiding a stumble along the way to the SEC championship game. The offense is rolling. Obviously led by Carson Beck, who got his favorite target, and Brock Bowers back last week from injury. He's leading the team leading the team with 600 yards. And DeJuan Edwards is spearheading them close to 700 yards. And for a team, and Kirby Smart, who is fancy himself on defense is no slouch. He literally has one of the most explosive offenses in all of college football, who's ranked 9th overall. Tennessee, on the other hand, they're coming off a really, really bad loss. 36-7 to number 14 Missouri on the road. Joe Milton III is going to have to figure out a way to keep up with a high-power offense, with an offense of his own that just couldn't get out of his own way last week between penalties and mistakes, including a costly fumble at the end of the first half. Here's the thing, too. They only ran 23 plays in the first half, while Missouri ate up almost the entire first quarter on just 2 possessions, and pretty much held the possession time advantage to 2-1 margin. Going into this game, what Tennessee does have is a pass rush, and Georgia has struggled as far as protecting the quarterback and stopping the run. So there's 2 things that Tennessee do possess and gives them an advantage. However, when you look at the stinks that the Bulldogs are going into, and the fact that this offense has come off a game where they racked up almost over 600 yards in total offense, and everything is firing. They just got the top receiver, the type passing target back. The offensive line has been dominant. If you saw in the Auburn game several weeks back, they are patient. They don't always they can sit around and they can just wear down defenses, and that's gonna be a problem for Tennessee, which is why if they have to keep the game close, they're gonna have to convert some first downs. If you're noticing it though, open up that playbook a little bit, and they're gonna have to figure out a way to keep the ball. That's one of the best ways to keep a high-power offense from hurting you. Keep them off the field altogether. So they're gonna have to run the ball. They're gonna have to open up the playbook a little more and take some shots downfield. I think that was one of the things they didn't do enough until they were too far behind last week. But this is a game that I don't see Georgia stumbling. I think it's gonna be a tough game, but I do think Georgia's gonna pull away and survive this pseudo trap. It's not. I shouldn't even call it a trap game.
It's a trap game. It's a trap game. The way Tennessee played against Missouri last week, it's a trap game.
Yeah, but you can't call a 7-3 team a trap game. But
for Georgia, you
challenge.
Can.
Yeah, if you're Georgia, you can.
It's definitely a different challenge, but I do see Georgia pulling away. I just think that's just too good right now. They're the number 1 team in the nation for a reason. And right now, I know they're playing for a streak, but the only streak they're concerned about right now is being the first team since Minnesota in the 30s to win 3 straight national championships. So I do think the Bulldogs pull this one out, and they get ready for that inevitable showdown with Alabama in Mercedes-Benz Stadium in a couple of weeks.
It is very inevitable. That's already locked in, by the way. So
Yeah,
we'll
pretty
see what
much.
happens. It is. So, all right. I think Oregon State and Washington, who were playing this weekend, it's kind of a shame that College Game Day isn't there. They're giving James Madison their flowers. I'll give them that. But still, Oregon State is 8-2, and the 10th ranked team in the country. Only 2 losses this year to Arizona, who is now a top 25 team in their own right. And yeah, I can't even talk right now. They also lost another game earlier this year. I have to remember which one it is. Washington State. They lost at them. They're not as good of a team, but they lost both those games on the road. Big stakes on the line for Oregon State. Talking about them first, they're going to have a big crowd going in there in Corvallis. Damian Martinez is the running back. He had 4 touchdowns last week against Stanford. He's rushed for 1,024 yards this season. That's the 18th player to ever go 1,000 plus yards in Oregon State. And Oregon State, they've had some nice wins this year. They won against Utah, given their first loss. Had a close win against Colorado in Colorado, and then just put the hammer down on Stanford. Oregon State has a very outside shot of still making the Pac-12 championship. Washington and Oregon are their last 2 games, respectively. They'll both be in national spotlights, but they're going to have a little bit of a challenge. But they are favored against Washington because Washington has been, obviously, how they've been this season. Michael Penix Jr. is still probably the leader of the clubhouse for the Heisman Trophy, if not second. I like Jaden Daniels from LSU myself, but this is not that time to talk about that. But 3,533 total passing yards, 26 touchdowns this season. He has the most completed passes of 10 yards or more, and he threw for 332 and 2 scores against Utah this past weekend. Washington has been an interesting case because since September, they haven't won a game by more than 10 points. They won at Arizona. They had that pretty much last team with the ball game against Oregon. They only won by 8 against Arizona State in the 15-7 game, which if you've seen Washington, I don't know how they could ever play in a 15-7 game. They had the at Stanford USC combo. USC was another one of those last team with the balls. USC kind of struggled in the fourth quarter, won that game 52-42. And then last week against Utah, in a game that had a pick 6 that was dropped literally at the 1-yard line, that could have been a little bit better than that, but they won that game 35-28. That's one thing to look at. Another thing that I'm actually interested in looking at is another angle in itself. There was a court order this week that basically gave Oregon State and Washington State rights to the Big 12. They basically said, everybody's board of directors the Pac-12.
Pac-12.
You know what I mean. They basically said to everybody else's board of directors, you should have no say in the future of the Pac-12. Get out of the room. They were like, you can still do it until the end of the year. They said, hell no. So they're going to kind of be the ones that now control. There's been some stays putting order because, money is money and you got to get as much money as you can out the door. So that's going to be another interesting storyline, how Oregon State and Washington State are trying to keep the Pac-12 alive. And we're going to see some interesting stuff on that. But that's another little momotivational factor. See, this is going to be one of the Pac-12.
Especially amid rumors that they've been having conversations with the Mountain West. And
that's going to be interesting to see how they get that in together. But Oregon State, Washington is going to be a game to watch. Washington underdog in this game. Washington is probably going to make the Pac-12 title game. They could beat Washington State next week and do that anyway, but they have to go undefeated to get themselves any chance at the CFP, especially if all of these teams stay undefeated. It's really going to be which one of those 4 teams is out, and I think the 2 teams that would be – I know Ohio State and Michigan can't stay undefeated, but it's really going to be – they can stay undefeated. They're going to be the one that'll probably end up being the 3 or 4 seed in the college football playoff. Going to be a very interesting last few weeks down the stretch. I can't believe we're only 2 weeks away from finding out who will make the final 4 team CFP.
Yeah, you know what? I still say that they should go full Bachelor and Bachelorette and just hand out roses to the final 4.
I disagree.
Have a stage and have the coaches in full tuxedo hand out the roses.
No.
Yeah, the only
Sorry.
place they hand out roses, Anthony, is in Pasadena. So that just, that's it.
Barely,
I'm just
barely
saying,
anymore now.
the home of the college football playoff, Disney is the parent company. So ESPN, ABC umbrella, I'm just saying.
And the host of the show actually does college football, Jesse Palmer.
That's true.
But
Yes!
okay. I hate to say that now you really want me to, after talking about The Bachelor, you really want me to move on to the professional football team. So here we go. As we go into a dark week 11, where I have never wished for a bye week more for any team, we're going to talk about that. So let's move over on to the professionals. The New York Giants are first because Tommy DeVito's mom might kick him out of the house if we go Jets first. So Mrs. and Mr. DeVito, we're gonna give your wishes, and we're gonna start with the Giants. We know his dad is also pissed at the Giants. If you watched the Sunday's game, where he basically said that's what you call a fourth down play. So sorry, Giants first. As we go into a dark week 11, where again I have never wished for a bye week more in my whole life. The Giants are coming off a not as good as it looked 49-17 loss at Dallas. Yes, I said that correctly. A not as good as it looked 32-point loss against Dallas. Not great.
Mm-hmm.
The Washington Commanders, who are currently 4-6, are almost double-digit point favorites and might be now. As of this writing, they were 9.5-point favorites this upcoming Sunday. Next week, Giants Patriots, baby. The Tank Bowl is on. Ugh. Jay, positive. Do we have to?
Yeah. Well, like I said, like I said at the top, Rabbi, contractual obligations are what they are for us. Just like with the 40-0 beatdown that the Cowboys administered in week 1, it was a real struggle to find anything positive for the Giants to hang their hat on and carry over from the, as you put it, not as close as it looked 49-17 routing by those same Cowboys this past week. It was a tough game to watch. We watched it together. But the best I could come up was that between Saquon Barkley and rookie quarterback Tommy DeVito, the Giant rushing attack wasn't a total loss like every other aspect of the game, save for maybe punter Jamie Gillen, who averaged 50 yards per punt on 7 punts, allowed 3 of them to be returned for just 9 yards for a net average of 48.6 yards per punt. Barkley had 66 yards on 13 carries. It's 5-1 a pop, but 44 of those came on a third quarter touchdown drive for the Giants' first points of the game. 2 of them on a pair of big runs of 13 and 21 yards. DeVito had 41 yards on 7 carries, 5.9 overall. 27 of them came on that same third quarter touchdown drive, including a 19-yard scramble ahead of Barkley's 21-yarder. All told, the Giants rushed for 111 yards on 23 carries, good for 4.8 a carry, and an EPA of 0.51, which is the only positive EPA stat the offense had. The Giants also relied on their running game in the 14-7 week 7 win over Washington, grinding out 106 yards on 32 carries. That's only good for 3.3, with Barkley and the quarterback, this time Tyrod Taylor, with the bulk of the rushing attempts in the yards. Barkley, 77 yards on 21 carries, 3.7 a rush. Taylor, 25 yards on 8 carries. It's only 3.1, and 20 of those yards came on a single carry that got the Giants inside the Washington 8 on a drive that ended with the first of the 2 touchdowns they'd scored that Sunday. Washington has held an opponent to less than 100 yards rushing only twice this season. They have up 96 on their opening day, 20-16 win over the Cardinals, and 59 in their 38-31 week 8 loss to the Eagles, which is a little deceptive as Philly chose to ride the right arm of quarterback Jalen Hurts to the tune of 29 of 38, 319 yards, and 4 scores for 135.7 passer rating. The Commanders gave up 107 yards on the ground to the Patriots the following week, and then 120 to the Seahawks last week, which was the 4th time they've allowed 121 yards or more rushing to an opponent. Granted, like most opponents have in games Daniel Jones has missed due to injuries, the Commanders will invariably stack the box against the Giants, and Keon Barkley, as DeVito has yet to show that he can be an effective passer. But the G-men have also shown that they can run against such fronts. And through week 10, Washington is 28th in the NFL in ESPN's run-stop win rate stat at 29%, which when put up against the Giants' 28th ranked run-block win rate of 69%, makes it a pretty even match. Like I said at the top, gents, it was a real struggle to find anything positive from the Giants' loss to Dallas that they can try and carry over into this NFC East matchup with the Commanders. But the running game is pretty much where the offense starts and ends, at least until Taylor comes off IR and can take over a quarterback. So that's where any positives will be found, if they can be found.
Negatives can be found everywhere, though, Anthony.
Oh,
Pick
abounding.
one.
Oh,
Pick one.
boy. You know what? I'm glad you guys are sitting down. I gotta go with the defense. 640 yards and 32 first downs. The Dallas Cowboys racked up on Sunday afternoon against this really, really banged up and completely bad Giants defense. Dak Prescott, 26 of 35, 404 yards, 4 touchdown passes. Brandon Cooks, 9 catches for 173 and a touchdown. He looked like Michael Irvin out there. It looked like Michael Irvin and Alvin Harper was going up against this Giants secondary. Outside of Brandon Cooks and CeeDee Lamb. That's just how bad it was. But also, when you look at and also Deontay Banks left the game with an ankle injury. That just made things even worse for the Giants secondary. When Trey Hawkins came on the field and was beat by Michael Gallup for a 41-yard touchdown pass literally a few plays later. The only silver lining to the Giants' defense performance was they did get one goal line stand in the first quarter where they kept the Cowboys, at least for them at that moment, out of the end zone on 4th and 1. But other than that, when you look at the Giants, and by the way, there was a lot of fighting and arguing on the sideline between Sterling Shepard and my mind went blank for a second.
Darius Slayton.
Yeah, Darius Slayton, Wink Martindale, and Brian Dable allegedly got into it before halftime, and it spilled over into the second half. Saquon Barkley had some choice words with Brian Dable. The frustration is showing, and it is making an ugly situation even worse. You look at the Giants' defense the last few weeks, and they've regressed considerably. We look at how good they played against Buffalo on Sunday night, how well they played against Washington, how well they played against the Jets. By the way, Leonard Williams' absence is very noticeable. With a pass rush that is literally, it's almost like he took the pass rush with him to Seattle in that trade because that pass rush has been nowhere to be found. And when you look at Wink Martindale, when you have a young defense that's beat up, that's inexperienced, maybe not leaving them on an island and constantly living and dying by the blitz, it's not a great idea. Maybe play a little more zone. He blitzes more than anybody, but it's so predictable. And I think I heard ESPN talked about this earlier this season, and even it's his blitz call is so predictable that you're not fooling anybody. I was just looking like, maybe down the blitz back a little bit when your secondary is so beat up, but this defense is just so awful. And here's the thing, too. This is the main culprit of how ugly that performance was. You could just go up and down the list of how bad the Giants have been the last couple of weeks, but last Sunday against Dallas in particular. But the defensive performance, considering how good they was for a 3-week stretch, to just how bad they were against Las Vegas and now Dallas back-to-back, I don't know what else to say. I mean, I think I pretty much made my point. The Giants defense definitely take the cake on ugliness this week.
It's a very ugly cake, to be fair.
Yeah.
Washington, by the way, has played all but 2 of their games by 1 score, and in those games they're 4-4. So they're going to be an interesting team for the future. I think it's a loaded NFC East. They still haven't played Dallas once yet. They already played Philadelphia twice in the first 8 weeks. Thank you, NFL schedule. And we mentioned Sam Howell's been sacked 7 times this season, and one of the main reasons why the Giants were able to beat the Washington Commanders 14-7, I believe, week 7 or 8. It was week 8. And now they play him again. And I think it's going to be a little bit of a different story. They have a offense that can hum a little bit under Eric Bieniemy. yeah, don't take what Joe Tafaro has said about him being like a terrible coach. He doesn't have the same chef weapons. There's not a Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. Sam Howell is done the trick. I think he just needs a line that's a little bit better than what they have now. It's not like Sam Howell can't do any worse than 17 of the other replacement quarterbacks that are currently in the NFL this year. But you need a good running game to do that. And with Antonio Gibson having a decent year, but he's pretty much moved over in the complimentary role to Brian Robinson. His first year, of course, altered rather drastically. Was a victim of a gunshot and an attempted robbery just weeks before the season began. Came back at a pretty decent second half of the season. Became the master of the big hat. We love the big hat. The big hat is always welcome here on the show. But fully healthy this year, 485 yards, 8 touchdowns, and last week in the game against Seattle, he had 6 targets for 119 yards. One play which went pretty much 65 yards for the house of my fantasy team. Really appreciates that. Washington is a good team. They're going to need a little bit of a direction in the near future that might not include Ron Rivera. So this is going to be a very interesting matchup. These are the games that the Washington Commanders should win, and they should be a 500 team at the end of the year. And again, as we said with the Giants, what you want in a team is consistency. The way that they can, at least if you can't improve, you want to stay where you are so you know you have a building block. And I think Washington might have that going forward. You haven't heard Jacoby Brissett's name at all this year because Howell has been a competent quarterback for this team. And I don't think that's going to stop now, especially with the weapons that he has in the backfield. All right, let's move on to the Jets. Same problems.
I apologize for loud crunching noises. I skipped dinner, so I'm a little bit of a snacky. I'm a little snacky right now. Okay.
All good, Ant. It's all good.
It's all good. Why would we stop now? If anything, more the question. All right. Meanwhile, the Jets, same problems, double the wins. The 4 and 5 Jets could not find the end zone if a map was drawn of it, with the largest of X's in the middle. 16-12 loss to the Raiders on Sunday night. And if you do the math, yes, 4 field goals for the Jets, not 4 field goals for the Raiders. It was 3 field goals and a touchdown. And now the Bills are next in the table factory known as Orchard Park. And they're having a little bit of trouble as they just fired their offensive coordinator, Ken Dorsey, a couple of days ago. Jay, a little more on the positive side than you saw from the Giants, but in a game that the Jets kind of had to have, they did it. But the positives are there to make this game against Buffalo at least competitive.
Yeah, I mean, and the positive is a glaringly obvious one, and that's the defense, top to bottom. I mean, we talked about it plenty last season, and it's true once again. The Jets have a top-flight defense that gets put under an inordinate amount of pressure to be perfect every week by, to borrow from Zach Rosenblatt, Jets beat writer for The Athletic, a middling remedial offense. Gangrene 16-12 loss to the Raiders last Sunday was just the latest example. They held the Raiders to 5 for 15 on third down, held quarterback Aiden O'Connell to just 153 yards on 16 of 27. That's under 60% completion and 5.67 yards per attempt with 1 score and 1 pick. Passer rating of just 72, and they dropped him 3 times. They held Devontae Adams, one of the best wide receiver ones in the NFL, without a catch in the second half, and they stifled a possible scoring drive late in the fourth quarter by forcing a fumble. The problem is that unless this defense, which is 3rd in the NFL and EPA per True Media, pitches a shutout and or scores on its own, chances are the Jets won't win. The numbers tell the story, guys. They have been elite against the pass. 2nd in the NFL in passing yards per attempt, 5.4. 3rd in the NFL in total passing yards, 15.24. Tied for 3rd in the NFL in passing TDs allowed, just 9. 16th in the NFL in sacks, only 25, but number 1 in pressure rate, 29.6%. 4th in the NFL in passer rating allowed, 76.2. 4th in the NFL in EPA by pass defense, 30.9. A little more middle of the pack against the run, 27th in rushing yards total, 1,246. 24th in rushing yards per attempt, 4.3. 10th in the NFL in rushing TDs. They only have let guys in 5 times via the run. 23rd in the NFL in first downs allowed by run with 65, 16th in the NFL in expected points by run defense, 3.3. However, top 10 in scoring and efficiency, 7th in the NFL in scoring defense, 19-1 a game, 6th in the NFL in total points allowed, 172, 3rd in the NFL yards per play allowed, 4.6. 5th in the NFL in red zone TD percentage allowed, 44%. 6th in the NFL in score percentage. It means they allow an offensive score. The percentage of times they allow an offensive score, 31.8% of all drives. 4th in the NFL in points allowed per drive, 1.46. 2022 Defensive Rookie of the Year cornerback Sauce Gardner summed it up this way after the Raiders game in talking about the Jets' 4-5 record and the pressure on his unit. Here's the quote. I'm not going to say it's surprising. We're not playing complimentary football. It's just a fact. It ain't no surprise at all. Yeah, but, that's how we get coached. The coaching is if they can't score, they won't win. When you embrace that, we always put it on us. Now, that's a great attitude for a defense to have, especially one that's at this level. But if things continue to be this one-sided, it's just not sustainable. But right now, it's all the Jets have, guys.
That seems like a very good 2023 video opening. It's all the Jets have. Their defense is really good. Everything else is shit. Yes, I'm cursing a lot more this week. And it's also because of the voice. Anthony, bad. That offense is not good. And we talked about Zach Wilson. We tried to be nice to Zach Wilson a ton of times. Numbers were there last week, but just not the play.
I feel like when we talk about the Jets this season, I feel I'm going through my Facebook memories and looking back to last season. Because I feel like it's the same conversation.
I feel like it is a different Zach Wilson this year when it comes to accountability and at least learning things. But again, his stuff is so remedial.
The results have been
the results are pretty much the same.
Yeah, look, the Jets' missed opportunities on offense should drive the defense absolutely insane. I 100% feel the defensive frustration when you basically have to pitch a shutout to win games. Otherwise, you may end up losing because your offense can't do anything with the football. They outgained the Raiders 365 to 274 and resulted in 4 field goals. Listen to this. The Jets are going 36 drives without scoring an offensive touchdown. Their last offensive touchdown was the Breece Hall touchdown against the Giants almost like 3.5 weeks ago. And that is it. They
let him score on that play.
And they let him score. And it took 3 missed tackles for that to happen. That is spanning across 11 quarters, across 3 games. They have the worst red zone offense as far as percentage in the NFL at 22%. The next closest team is 10 percentage points higher. That's the Tennessee Titans at 32%. The Giants, for all their offensive troubles, are actually 3rd. So that's how bad the Jets have struggled offensively. But here's also the thing too. They have not scored a red zone touchdown on the road this season. In any road game this season, Breece Hall in the red zone, for as good as he is, only averaging just 2.3 yards per carry. Zach Wilson's red zone accuracy drops to 46% on passes. And the Jets, and to make matters worse, the Jets are historically bad on 3rd down. They have the 4th worst 3rd down percentage since the 1970 NFL merger at 25%. Part of the reason is Zach Wilson being forced on 3rd and long situations, which he's had a plenty of. His accuracy has been not bad, but certainly not NFL caliber as far as picking up first downs and keeping the drive alive. He's literally near the bottom or close to the bottom in every passing statistic this season. But I get it. Zach Wilson was not meant to be the starter this year. He's kind of got thrown into the fire because of what happened when Aaron Rodgers 4 plays into the season. But there are times Zach Wilson looks absolutely lost as far as lining up and seeing what the defense is presenting him. There's literally one play, the interception at the end of the game, where he, for whatever reason, I don't know if he red zone or not, but he still the receiver down so long that he just basically gave a defender an opportunity to make the play on the football. Look, the Jets are 4-5, and and it shouldn't even be 4-5. That record should be so much better. But this is the thing when you have a great defense, a championship caliber defense, and an offense that is literally holding everything else back. I mean, we saw Garrett Wilson's frustrations play out on the sideline, and it's a frustrating thing to watch if you're a fan, if you're a player on that defensive side, knowing that you are giving your team every opportunity to win, and the offense can't hold up its end of the bargain, whether because the quarterback play is not good, whether because of situation, they're throwing long all the time, and Zach Wilson's getting sacked nonstop, or the fact that when they get into the end zone, they can't finish the drive out and score a touchdown. So there's just been a number of things that's gone wrong with this offense. And when you're going up against a team that has its own offensive issues in Buffalo, it's kind of like a something has to give situation. Like hey look, neither of these offenses can't be this bad to the point where we may have a 3-3 game in the fourth quarter. I think we had that a couple of weeks ago with the Giants, but the Jets has got to get something going on offense. I don't know what it is. Jay, you as a quarterback, I have to ask you for your quarterback expertise. What are you seeing with Zach Wilson right now? That obviously I'm seeing that's not looking good, but what Zach Wilson is not picking up defensively, or what he's not seeing on film, because he looks literally lost, as if he's not capable of playing quarterback in the NFL or at times. And then there are times where he can't at least show a flash of brilliance. Why can't the consistency be there for Zach Wilson to at least give this offense a chance to do anything?
Part of it is on Zach. I mean, we've talked about this time and again throughout his first, the early parts of his career, about how the fact that despite the fact that he has terrific arm talent and he's very athletic, can make use of his feet, he doesn't process quickly. He doesn't go through his progressions quickly. He sometimes tries to force balls to try and make a play. Now, he's gotten better at taking the layups that are out there this year, but I still see issues with how Nathaniel Hackett is calling the game. The Jets had a little 2-game stretch where it looked like, the two of them had finally, that Wilson had stopped playing scared. And, he was just, as I used the phrase that night on the show, letting it rip. And Hackett's play calling was less about coaching and calling plays out of fear, being completely, judgy and risk averse and just letting it rip. But here's the thing. Hackett and this offense were designed with Aaron Rodgers in mind, because the relationship that Hackett and Rodgers have, and that Rodgers covers up a lot of Hackett's play calling mistakes. Hackett has shown throughout his career, when he's been without Rodgers, that he struggles as a play caller. Rodgers cleans up a lot of mistakes, because if Hackett sends in a play that is maybe too conservative or maybe isn't the right play call, Rodgers is comfortable enough in that offense. He knows it inside and out that he can easily check to the correct play. Zach Wilson does not have that experience to do that. Zach has basically said the thing that he looks at when he comes up to the line, especially in obvious passing downs, is there a single high safety? If it is, he knows that Garrett Wilson has a one-on-one matchup on the outside, and that's where he's going with the ball come hell or high water. And I get some of that is utter faith in Garrett's ability to make contested catches, but there are still plenty of times where that throw is ill-advised. And so it's a question of, once again, I'm seeing regression to the early part of the season where Hackett was a nervous Nelly with his play calling, and that trickles down to how your quarterback winds up playing. And we're seeing that regression after we had a couple of weeks where it looked like the two of them as a tandem had finally turned the corner. This offense is not great by any shape, manner, or form, but it just makes me wonder what Zach Wilson could do if he had a play caller who actually could figure out a way to maximize what he does well. One read, half the field. If that's there, throw it, get it out, bang, bang. I ran through the stats of what Wilson is like when he gets the ball out under 2.5 seconds. He's a competent NFL quarterback. If he has to take too long, if he has to survey the field, if he has to make secondary, tertiary reads, his ability, his level of competency drops. And at some point, as much as, Wilson hasn't done himself any favors with some of the decisions he's made, a lot of that is him having nowhere to go with the ball because the play that Hackett has put in has been sniffed out or wasn't right for what was out there. And Wilson just doesn't have the experience to check into something else that Rodgers would.
Okay, so Zach Wilson is boring, and you've wasted all of my time talking about what the real story of this game is, and it's what the hell has happened to the Buffalo Bills.
Oh, yeah. Take your time with this one, Rabbi, because the firing of
take away the Dick Rubber Twitter account, segment.
Yeah. So they fired Ken Dorsey on Monday after we'll get to what was just a puzzling game against the Broncos. I watched the whole thing. We'll talk about that in a second. The Bills, since week 5, where they just came off that big win over Miami, going across the pond to play Jacksonville, 21% of their drives ended in a turnover. And that is one of the reasons why this team is where it is right now. So Dorsey out, quarterback coach Joe Brady, who was with the Panthers in 2021. It was basically a fall guy for Matt Rule. And then because he really had a passing game coordinated at LSU that was big. He also was an offensive assistant for some good Saints teams in 2017 and 2018. And he just didn't work out in Carolina, so he came to Buffalo. And this team is going to go and live and die on Josh Allen. Now, I'm going to give you good stats and bad stats. Let's start with the bad one. Obviously, Josh Allen has one of the best yardages in the league. He has a penchant to throw a pick, though. He is leading the lead in picks this year. He has 11. Jordan Love and Mac Jones both have 10. And he has had a pick in his last 6 games. There's only been 2. That is the most, by the way, for a Bills quarterback since Ryan Fitztragic in 2011. Allen has only, by the way, had 2 contests this year that have been interception free. And he's also had 2 turnovers caused by handing off. So he's been responsible for a lot. And what the Buffalo Bills have been doing is just very, very confusing because if you saw Josh Allen on Monday, he threw some confusing passes, like right at the end of the half, basically a ball that should never have been thrown. Denver got the interception, got 3 points out of it, and then they had the ball again to start the second half. But there were times in that game where Buffalo just went down the field, and Denver, whose defense has improved, but let's remember they gave up 70 points at one point this year. Denver couldn't do anything. But it was just Buffalo was just Allen just makes mistakes. He was 15 to 26 in that game, 177 yards, but 1 touchdown and 3 turnovers. 14 turnovers, 11 interceptions again this year. And you almost starts out slow at every single game. And he just makes the wrong plays at the wrong times. There are just so many head scratchers. And the funny thing is, the running game has been pretty damn good this year with James Cook kind of becoming their most efficient running back in quite some time. And by the way, you see Devin Singletary in Houston and Zach Moss in Indianapolis, you have to feel like they've had people in the backfield all of the time.
The most efficient running back with the name of Cook in the NFL.
Well, let's not kill his brother. His brother's been pathetic, but that's another story for another time. But this team, it's kind of funny because Allen, he targets Davis and Diggs a ton, and anything outside of that, he only throws 22% more to the number 3, 4, and 5 wide receivers. Everything else is to a tight end. Dalton Kincaid has had a very good year, but Josh Allen just has a tendency of playing what we call hero ball, and it's just been a big problem because with the numbers that Josh Allen has put up this year, it could easily compare to any other year. And we're now entering the is Josh Allen good phase of his career. And then I look at some stats. This year, Pro Football Focus has last season, Pro Football Focus deemed that 4.2% of Allen's throws were considered turnover worthy. That number is down to 2.4%. That's less than Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, and Lamar Jackson. And with all these deep threats, it seems like Allen just feels like he has a get out of jail free card all the time. And when you have wide receivers like Gabe Davis that haven't been doing anything, and a running game that can be really good at times, but then they could only average 3.3 yards per carry because no one can block. It's a very confusing team. Josh Allen is a very confusing quarterback, and a wide receiver group that can really, really do things in the NFL is not doing it. And after that, and with all of that, you have Stephon Diggs' brother, Trayvon Diggs, coming off of the coming on the couch and tweeting that basically Stephon needs to get out of Buffalo, just adding problems to all of this mess. And you wonder, with all of this, has Buffalo's window closed? Is Josh Allen going to have to play safer? Does Josh Allen work best this way? Does Josh Allen really work as this generation's Brett Favre? Can someone who is this generation's Brett Favre be successful in the NFL? There's so many questions about Buffalo that you would never think they are a half a game better than their opponent coming in Sunday. Buffalo is the most disappointing team in the NFL. And honestly, it's not even close.
I will say this: if there was any bright spot from that Monday night game, and it was late in the fourth quarter, and seeing Damar Hamlin back on the football field.
Yeah.
Even though it was out of necessity because the Bills' defense is pretty beat up, and he had to come in late in the game. He even made a tackle on that last drive, Denver's last drive. It was good to see him back on the field. But yeah, you hit all cylinders on this one. The Bills have been really bad. Josh Allen has tried to do too much at times, and it's cost his team. Trayvon Diggs, I understand he's trying to defend his brother, but I think he just made things worse and even more, a little more complicated in that locker room when you realize that's still Stephon's teammate and the guy who's got to give him the football each Sunday. So look, I look at it like this: the Buffalo Bills, the window of opportunity. We talk about it has it closed. It could have closed last year in the divisional playoff loss to Cincinnati. I mean, Buffalo has not really been the same team that we've seen the last few years ever since that divisional playoff loss. And yeah, you do have to wonder if this team is going to get into the postseason, because you got an AFC North that can send 3 teams in, maybe 4, depending on what's going on.
Probably
with
not anymore, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, depending on what happens there. We see him leave the game tonight. Buffalo has played themselves in a really tough jam. And also, do they play? They play Miami again this season. Am I correct? One more
At
time?
the last game of the season.
Yeah. So I mean, it's going to come down. It's going to come down to whether or not Buffalo can piece it together on both sides of football. You have an offense struggling and a defense that's really getting beat up and it's getting dinged up by the week at this point.
The biggest thing for me, guys, with this, and Rabbi, you ran the numbers, as well as the Stat King would. But here's the my takeaway from, my delving into, why Dorsey got canned. The thing that kind of popped up most often is that Dorsey's play calling had become predictable. His tendencies had become widely known by Bills opponents across the NFL. He had a propensity to, go to the well of his favorite concepts so often that, the other side knew when it was coming. Instead of trying to, be a little more creative, and creativity was a hallmark of of that offense that he helped put together with Brian Daboll. It's almost like Daboll left and the creativity went downstate with him. So I think the change in offensive coordinator and change in play caller, even if there's not, the overall scheme is going to be the same. I mean, Sean McDermott has always wanted the threat of the run to help this and still be able to be kind of a more of a as much of a pass-centric offense, which you obviously want to be with Josh Allen as your quarterback. But there's got to be some diversity. There has to be some creativity. There has to be more. You have to expand the playbook. And Dorsey had shrunk the playbook. And I think that's ultimately what led to this offense being where it is, which led to him getting canned.
I don't know if they could really shrink that, if they could really expand that playbook, because I think you mentioned basically with Caleb Williams.
When I say expand the playbook, I mean using all of it. Dorsey had stopped using all of it.
I think, John, if they're not like audibles that Allen is calling at the line, because some of the passes that Allen has made this year are just not. They don't seem like calls that are made. They just seem like bad decisions that were almost forced into. And Josh Allen has kind of turned into his rookie self. Or maybe this is what Josh Allen was all along. He just needed a Brian Daboll to kind of cover up his shortcomings. How you mentioned before that.
I understand what you're saying, Rabbi, but I agree with you that some of those throws just have you scratching your head and going, is he regressing back to the seemingly wild arm, thrower he was as a rookie. But here's the other thing. If the defense knows what you're calling, right? Because like I said, Dorsey's play calling tendencies had become known far and wide, then the reason Allen is forcing things is because there's nothing available to him with that play call. So maybe it's a little bit of both.
That's what I'm saying. Throw it away.
Yeah, but we're talking about Josh Allen. He's not. That's not the first thing on his mind. Right or wrong, he's a gunslinger. He doesn't think that way. So it'll be interesting for me to see if Brady opens, kind of opens up. Meaning, when I say open up, meaning he kind of uses the entire playbook as opposed to just the narrow band of plays that Dorsey had kind of gotten complacent into using.
And one thing that we haven't mentioned yet is honestly the outside of Kincaid and Diggs, there's no reliable other receiver on this team because Dave Davis has been a massive disappointment and has dropped a ton of balls. So that's another reason. We'll get more about that later. But first, nice shiny courts and in-season tournament talk. Let's go. All right. So finally today, we are 3 days, three rounds or 3 games or 3 match days into the NBA in-season tournament. It's the newest concept by commissioner and idea man Adam Silver. It's pool play. There's 6 groups of 5. You play 4 games, 2 on the home, 2 on the road. Those games are going on Tuesdays and Fridays. December 4th and 5th, we'll get the quarterfinals. 4 teams out of each group in the East and the West will play, 3 division winners and 1 wild card, which will be determined by a lot of tiebreakers that I won't talk about right now. We'll talk about that probably in this segment. December 7th for the semis, December 9th for the finals, and the semis and finals are actual work trips to for the NBA to Vegas. Yes, people are actually going to earn money in Vegas now. Anthony, your opinion on all of this, and if you work in European soccer, I will give you extra points, whatever that means.
Yeah, well, I mean, I give the NBA credit for trying to do something different. We've had complaints for years, but by the way, for those of you who are watching live on Facebook or on the YouTube replay, I am wearing Knicks City Edition jersey, which the team will be wearing during their in-season tournament games at home. But it gives the players an incentive because we've had complaints about players sitting out. Load management has been a major topic the last few years. And we've seen that these games have been pretty competitive. They've been fun to watch for the most part. Just Tuesday alone, we've seen a couple of WWE SmackDown level matches take place.
I don't think Adam
gonna
Silver is happy with Draymond Green and or
no,
Rudy Gobert and or Klay Thompson for all.
no, but I will say Draymond Green should definitely go for the United States Championship. So I mean,
He's got
Triple H
5
should be
games
out
off,
there.
so I'm sure he'll have a chance
Yeah, I
now.
mean, hey, get Draymond Logan Paul into the World Circle at some point. But here's the thing. My biggest complaint with this NCAA tournament is those god awful basketball courts. Some of them courts are bland. The Brooklyn Nets court looks no different than what they normally play on, minus the wishbone design. The Celtics even petitioned to have at least part of the parquet design as part of the court, which was denied. There was a video of LeBron James literally playing around with footing because the Lakers had never played on that court up until this past Tuesday night.
That's right.
So yeah, you gotta understand when you're LeBron James and you invest millions of dollars into your body, the last thing you want is you're playing on a wood hockey rink made of wood because of the slip and slide and the designs look like stickers, but they're really part of the court. Luka Doncic actually complained about the Pelicans court being too slick in certain areas.
And by the way, the Dallas Mavericks never got their court on time for their first game, so they probably actually didn't know what they were expecting.
Yeah, and also the colors. Like I had no problem with thinking outside the box, but these two-tone basketball courts. I'm even looking forward to the Knicks. Look at the Knicks in-season tournament court. That's a lot of orange, okay? And that's just way too much orange.
Chicago Bears orange.
Yeah, some of these courts just look incredibly. They're really difficult on the eyes. I mean, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 courts that is red, primarily red. Okay, there was 4, there's 6 that is gray. There was. I understand. Like, I understand. I give the league a lot of credit for trying to make the in-season tournament feel different from a regular season game, but the courts probably was a step too far. They're ugly. I don't ever want to see a Pelicans in-season tournament home game again with that design.
Neither does Luka Doncic, apparently.
The people of Crayola should be filing a trademark copyright infringement on the NBA because some of these courts are downright ugly. Like I would say this: unless you're colorblind or watching on a prehistoric black and white TV, you're not gonna have fun watching some of these games. I mean, like when you think about the arena lights reflecting on these damn things, it is bad to watch. Like I had a hard time watching the Celtics Nets game in Boston. By the way, if you're a Celtics player and you're used to playing on parquet and you look down and you're thinking, what the hell am I playing on tonight? Don't feel bad. Everybody in the league is probably thinking that right now. Look, I want the in-season tournament to be different. I want it to work out because Adam Silver, for what it's worth, has been one of the more outside the box commissioner thinkers. By the way, yes, it is a concept they took from the Euro League and some of the European soccer federations and the WNBA, who has the Commissioner's Cup in their season. So the league trying to do something different, but keep the courts, take those away. But maybe like half these teams have city edition courts already. Like you got teams with 3 different basketball courts. It is so
more. Let's get more going on. All right, Jay, let's stop playing Queer Eye for the Straight Guy now and immediately move on and talk about some adjustments that you would make that you would see this be better. Or give me your thoughts first.
Yeah, when this tournament was first announced, my first thought was, why? Did the NBA really need to borrow a staple of European soccer in order to make November games between the likes of the 2-9 Wizards and the 2-10 Pistons more important because Adam Silver was tired of losing the first 2 months of the regular season to the behemoth of fandom that is the NFL? Or is it because he needed a way to get the players, specifically those load managing stars? Yeah, I'm looking at you, Kawhi, to buy into getting back to playing as many of the season's 82 games as possible, which is the new mandate. Or maybe Silver sees this in-season tournament as a potential revenue generator, a la the play-in tournament that he can pitch to corporate sponsors and or potential broadcast partners in the next media rights deal. If the NBA was hoping that because a decent amount of the players come from outside the U.S. and plenty of the entire rank and file are big soccer fans, that this will evolve into something akin to Europe's FA Cup, which, by the way, is 150 years old, is done single elimination style, and includes over 700 teams from all levels of soccer, or even along the lines of, as Anthony mentioned, the EuroLeague, which is the championship of European club basketball, and that players and fans alike would gulp down the Kool-Aid at the jump. Maybe Silver and company need to slow their roll and listen to the likes of Denny Avdija, small forward for the Wizards, who played in the EuroLeague for Maccabi Tel Aviv and gave this assessment. Here's his quote. I feel like the NBA sometimes needs to stick to what it is because the NBA is special. If they get other ideas and they try to add it to the game, I like it, but all the courts and all the colors and all the stuff around it, I get it, it's a show, but it's not needed. It's not needed. But I like that the NBA is taking a lot of ideas from Europe because it's a whole nother culture. So maybe what the in-season tournament needs is some tweakage. David Aldridge, the senior NBA columnist for The Athletic, who has covered the association for almost 3 decades for such media outlets as Turner Sports, ESPN, and the Washington Post, and is as respected a media voice there is in the sport, wrote a great piece last Saturday on the tweaks he would make to the in-season tournament. Here's what he would do, and I'm going to use this because I completely agree with this. Do the tournament single elimination style, which Aldridge believes could be done pretty easily and thus could be played anytime the NBA thinks is best for the biggest impact during those first 2 months of the season. The defending conference championship from the previous season, so for last year it would be Denver and Miami, would get a first round bye. The remaining 14 teams in each conference would play each other in whatever format or grouping the NBA would decide to use. Could be by record, by geography, hell, drawing names out of a bowl. Aldridge could care less. All that matters is that the first round is single elimination. After that, you'd be left with 8 teams in each conference, the 7 first-round winners and the defending conference champions who had the bye. Now you're at the round of 16, which again would be done single elimination. Aldridge doesn't care how the NBA would seed these games in each conference, by whether it's by how they do it in the postseason or the higher seed picks who they want to play. Another single elimination round would leave 8 teams total, 4 from each conference. One more single elimination round and leave you with a final 4, which will be played in Las Vegas as they intend on doing this year. But now we get to Aldridge's plot twist, and this is why I'm on board. I love this. The final 4 would take place during All-Star Weekend, and the in-season tournament final would replace the All-Star game. The NBA wants the in-season tournament to be big. Doesn't get much bigger than that. Aldridge would keep all the other stuff that happens during All-Star Weekend, like the rookie-sophomore game and the skills competitions, your three-point shooting contest, your slam dunk contest. He'd also be fine with players being named All-Stars, as there are contractual bonuses and such for receiving that honor. He just wouldn't play the actual game, as he's long felt that it's, and this is his word, not mine, irredeemable. I agree with him completely. The game is unwatchable and has been for years. So replace the All-Star game with the in-season final. Aldridge would still play the semis Friday night in Vegas after the rookie-sophomore game, making NBA All-Star Friday night an even bigger event. The winners would then fly from Vegas to wherever All-Star Weekend is taking place, play the final on Sunday, and you'd actually have a competitive game for the NBA's midseason showcase event. I'll tell you what, if the NBA went this route with the in-season tournament, I would definitely be on board. Commissioner Silver, are you listening?
Commissioner Silver also has to figure out, do these games count as regular season games?
They do.
Are you playing 6 more games? If you play these games, all of a sudden, where do they go in terms of, do they replace something? How does everything become fair? Because the only game that's extra is actually the finals. Everybody else will play the same amount of games because they'll get grouped. That there's some things in there, but what David Aldridge really tried to do in there is basically just say abolish the All-Star game. That's essentially all he did in that segment. And you know what? That's a completely different topic than anything else, especially for a tournament.
I'm sorry.
That still means nothing. It still means nothing.
I think Rabbi, look, All I'm saying is that if they're hell bent on going down this road, why not take the path that leads to them making that that replace the All-Star game with an actual game.
Again, the thing is also, this is over by December 9th. So this isn't even to get this first half of the season entertaining. It's literally to get the first month of the season entertaining, which is always the biggest doldrum in all of the NBA.
It just means that, once all of the original rounds are done, you'll know who the Final Four are. They just won't play until All-Star Weekend.
Well, look at it by side like this. It's the only time the Detroit Pistons may actually be relevant this season. Because after February, no one's going to give a rat's ass about that team.
By the way, Detroit Pistons will not play the Washington Wizards. They are not in the same pool. By the way, they
will play them at some point this season.
Yes, but they won't play in pool play.
They will play a game sometime in the first 2 months.
Yes, but it's not meaningful because it's not in the same group, which is the point of the tournament. So you haven't done any research on it and have just basically seen
stop it.
I'm just telling you right now.
Stop.
We're doing a segment on it, guys. Do your research. All I'm going to say.
I did my research. Nobody wants to see the Pistons and the Pacers.
I want to see the Pacers. They're one of the best. They're one of the most fun teams in the league. I'm just saying, it's not that.
That's the other problem. Okay.
There's two problems with this whole thing, and I'm going to move on. I actually like seeing new concepts. Number one, the same team, because the thing is with these in-season tournaments, it's to make a team that you're not going to see a lot of during the season. That is not going to happen most likely, because most of the teams that you see in that final 8 are going to be in the in-season tournament and possibly in the finals. I'm telling you that right now. Number two, point differential should never decide anything. And that's how you determine who gets that fourth spot.
That's borrowing too much from soccer, where goal differential is a thing.
That's actually borrowing more from EuroLeague and borrowing a little bit from soccer in the situation of the Champions League. But point differential in basketball, no bueno. That's all I'm saying.
No.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
Before we end tonight, I would like to rant. And then I'm going to ask you guys to kind of chime in. So here we go. Tonight we get to DeShaun Watson, a man whose season came to an end this week after knee and shoulder surgery. It was recommended by doctors. It was like, can I play? And they basically said, no, makes no sense. So two things here. One, I'm not going to mention his personal legal troubles here by name. They can get into a whole nother conversation. We've got onto too many sidetracks tonight. Number two, I'm going to make reference to two things friends have said, one to start and one to end. So when I was at a friend's house Sunday, yes, it's Alan's. Our friend Alan was a huge Browns fan. He was making food for all of us and his terrific pork chili, again, off the topic. And he missed the Browns getting down 14-0 to the Ravens. And he said without watching the game, probably a DeShaun Jackson pick six somewhere in there. It was in the first play, kind of pretty predictable. After a season of ups and downs and playing a grand total in 2 seasons of 12 games of a possible 34 due to injuries and suspension of his own doing, Watson's time is done as a Brown by 2/5. His $230 million fully guaranteed, backloaded to make sure he doesn't lose any money due to suspension, is now 2/5 of the way over. It's a move that was almost universally scrutinized at the time of the signing, and right now it's just looking more and more like a move that wasn't scrutinized enough. In year one, where Watson could only come in for the final 6 games, saving a team who was 4-7 to become 7-10, what does that make 2023? So 2022 is basically a wasted year. That's 1 year out of the 5 done. Well, now the Browns are just 1 win away from matching that 2022 total. Watson's really only played in 5 of those games. Browns have gone 4-1, not necessarily because of Watson, but in a season where the defense is playing like a top 5 defense. Myles Garrett is an all-world killer and probably the leader for Defensive Player of the Year. And the skill positions of running back, yes, even though Nick Chubb is injured, Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt are doing a damn good job replacing him. And Amari Cooper, who was already on pace to best his yardage from last year by a bit, maybe not on the touchdown side. Where is the problem? Oh, it's probably the guy who had a lower completion percentage than any of his years in Houston. DeShaun Watson had a 7-4 touchdown to interception ratio to end his year, and a quarterback who didn't even average 200 yards a game in either of his abbreviated seasons in Cleveland. I think it would be easier to do that in that case. In an offseason in 2022, where the Browns ownership offered the world to a spoiled brat who the media and himself basically treated 2021 like it was a year off to regroup the way he treated free agency, it's funny now with all the things that he was supposed to solve as the answer that the quarterback is only the real problem. When you
There's
get
only
signed
one
to that,
answer.
yes, yes, I know. Can you let me finish? When you get signed for that contract, you are expected to be a top 5 quarterback and to lead your team to new heights. Except now, the Browns are realizing that maybe a year and a half of time off after that doesn't really help your career. The only depth that the team has achieved is new moral lows. When Cleveland head coach Kevin Stefanski said after the Indy loss, where Watson went 1-5 and then exit stage right, that Watson could come back in, and then Watson denied it, basically saying, "I don't know, something is wrong." Something is wrong with the player for somebody who decides to just not suck it up, or even if there's any issue that someone said doctors cleared him, but I don't want to come back in. And then Watson misses the Seattle game to make his heroic return in that one game against an Arizona team that was stuck in the Stranger Things vortex between Josh Dobbs and Kyler Murray. Something is wrong with the player. But when you pay all this money to improve what was a position of need, by the way, Baker Mayfield has started all of his games this season, is 4-5, and is with a Tampa team that is kind of better with him in playoff contention and not as much of a drop off as they thought they would have at that spot. Something is wrong with the player and team. By the way, Watson had a QBR sandwich between Jordan Love and Desmond Ridder for 2023. What an investment! When mentioning the Watson injury, a friend by the name of Jay texted me and Anthony and said that the Browns continue to be cursed. Nah, cursed means that you had stuff due to you that was beyond your control. The Browns had full control of what they were doing. This is a plague that they deserve under center. Thoughts?
Uh,
Go ahead,
Jay,
Andy.
they're in your division. I'll let
Yeah,
you.
but
I'll
go
let you
ahead,
take
Andy.
this one.
No, go ahead, because I'm going to wrap this up, because I promised Alan that mine would be the final word he would hear on this.
By the way, to add insult to injury, guess who was in the Cleveland Browns training camp this season? Oh, Josh Dobbs, a guy who is somehow miraculously keeping the Vikings season afloat after they lost Kirk Cousins. You know, with all the talk about Daniel Jones' contract, and clearly his play had not lived up to the contract, DeShaun Watson, I mean, that contract was just an absolute albatross, and we all pointed that out when it happened. Like, what are the Cleveland Browns thinking? They basically made Baker Mayfield a scapegoat and getting rid of him and put and they were all in DeShaun Watson, who, yeah, he had the legal issues going on at the time, and gave him a fully guaranteed contract that's backloaded. So now Cleveland can't even part ways with the guy without giving up pretty much half their franchise at this point. The Browns are not cursed, okay? This is definitely something of their own doing. Losing on the drive is a curse-worthy moment. Ernest Biter fumbling before he gets to the end zone is a curse-worthy moment. Signing a guy and giving him a guaranteed $200+ million contract, knowing his legal situation, knowing he wasn't going to be available for 2/3 of the first season you had him, now seeing that he's injury prone, he's nowhere near the quarterback we saw in Clemson and his first few seasons in Houston. That's not coast. That is, you fucked yourself over royally with no lube, no nothing. This is all on the Cleveland Browns. They did this all to themselves and have no one to blame but themselves. And it's so fortunate because their defense has been so good. Myles Garrett is literally doing crossovers sneak into the line of scrimmage and show a blitz, and they know the offensive line can't stop him. But when you have this mess going on the other side of the football, it seems like this has been a theme in tonight's show. When we're talking about good defenses and terrible offenses that's offset everything. And the Cleveland Browns is just that, okay? They did it all to themselves.
All right. When I texted y'all that they're cursed, I was referring to things that happened to them on the field, not the other stuff. Yes, the stupidity that went into landing DeShaun Watson in Cleveland. Yes, that is fully on all parties involved. When I say is there a franchise that's more cursed than the Browns, that's what I mean. I mean, the dog pound has to wonder if the football gods hate their team. They finally see the version of Watson they envisioned when the team acquired him, going 14 for 14 in the second half after a 6 for 20 first half that included a pick six, leading the Browns back from a 14-point second half deficit to beat the division-leading Ravens, who kicked the Bengals' ass tonight on Thursday Night Football, only to find out that he did it with what we now know to be a broken throwing shoulder, which will land him on the injury list for the rest of the season. He's played 12 games in 2 years, guys. And, as Rabbi kind of went down that path, so I'm going to follow that, and I'm going to run these numbers by you because it blew my mind when I ran them. He's totaled just 16 touchdowns in that span. 41 NFL quarterbacks have more, including C.J. Stroud, Watson's replacement, who was looking very much like Houston's new franchise quarterback. Stroud has more passing yards and more touchdown throws in 9 games as a rookie than Watson has produced since the start of 2021. Watson ranks 28th in the NFL in EPA per dropback per true media with the Browns with a negative 0.16 rate this season. There were times this season where he ranked last in the league in that category. He's also 29th in completion percentage, 61.4. From week 13 last season, his first game with the Browns, until now, Watson ranks 31st in EPA per dropback rate, negative 0.15. 29th in completion percentage, 59.8. 27th in passer rating, 81.7, among the 34 qualified quarterbacks. In the 6 games he's played this season, the Browns have averaged 5.1 yards per play. That's tied for 17th. Without him, they've averaged 4.1 yards per play, 31st, which would, with Watson, 6.5 yards per attempt, per pass, 25th. Without him, 5.5. That's 31st. With Watson, 4.6 yards per carry, tied for 5th. Without him, 3.7 yards per carry, tied for 26th. They are 20th in points per drive at 1.71 overall. The Watson's return 2 games ago improved that number greatly. They're 27th in total offensive EPA at negative 47.42. They're averaging 151.2 rushing yards in their 5 games since the bye week, but now they've lost their second most explosive runner. You can't help but see them reverting back to the struggling offense they were while Watson was out previously, which I talked about on our midseason show. And it's not going to matter whether it's Dorian Thompson-Robertson, who has been named as the starter this Sunday, or PJ Walker taking the snaps. As much as Watson's numbers with Cleveland are nowhere near his production in Houston, the Browns were still better off with him running the offense. As my BFF's husband, a diehard Browns fan, if ever there was one, said when I texted him condolences on the loss of his $230 million quarterback, he replied to me, quote, "It's the Browns. It's what we do. Waste elite defensive years. Yeah, it's going to get fugly from here on out, and it starts Sunday against the Steelers."
We'll see. I mean, considering Pittsburgh's defense is usually, we'll see. We'll see. It's going to be a very interesting stretch run for the 5 teams that keep their starting quarterbacks till the end of the season. Okay. By the way, shout out to college basketball, not men's, although we joked about Arizona,
Yes,
and now they're number
we'll bring it
3
up.
in the men's college basketball polls after losing Duke. But I got to give a shout out to women's college basketball. In a
Yes.
season where there's all this domination. Here are the teams that have lost, including tonight: LSU, UConn, Virginia Tech, Ohio State, Tennessee, Notre Dame, Indiana, Louisville, Maryland, Ole Miss, and add Iowa to the list tonight as they lost to Kansas State.
Yes.
So,
Caitlin clocked 6 for 32 tonight. So
Yes.
You want to talk? I mean, I know there was a lot of people that was kind of going after injuries after LSU. You was upset. Yeah, I think that the injuries detractors may be a little quiet tonight.
9 to 32, by the way, but still, it's terrible.
Yeah, but and that's taking nothing away from Caitlin Clark, but it just it shows that it goes as far as she goes, because if she still have an off night, they're unbeatable with
9
team.
of 32.
Hey,
That is
what it shows is just how potentially deep the women's tournament field
It's
is.
insane. It's
Yeah.
insane. Something
And
we've
that's
never seen
with
before.
UConn getting Paige Becker's back, which
And they
is
lost last week to
terrific
NC State.
for college basketball.
They lost last week to NC State. They have an injury. It's a
yes,
straight
by the
year
way,
already.
yeah, and by the way, this past weekend, not one but two women's college basketball games on national television. Like I said, I think for the women's game, it's a great thing, and seeing them getting the spotlight and seeing a lot of good teams and a lot of depth on that side of the side of the women's side of the game. It should be a fun college basketball season on both sides, men and women.
Yep. Rabbi, hold on to that list. I want you to revisit it as we get closer to March.
Only 2 times, by the way, in the Common Era did the first and second ranked teams lose opening weekend and in women's college basketball. 1998.
Wow.
That's the other time.
Wow.
All right. We've gotten a lot of words by Carissa Thompson about all of this stuff in our plugs. Let's go into it, because it's stuff that she has made up. So, but we don't make stuff. So, for Jay Kaplan, Anthony Strait, I'm Steve Rabinowitz. Thank you for watching edition of On the Sports Lines. Happy Turkey Day for all of those people. And we'll be back with you in about 2 weeks. YouTube.com/On the Sports Lines for all our on-demand stuff. Facebook.com/On the Sports Lines to see us live and to yell at Anthony about that City Edition jersey. It's not bad, but I mean, a lot of orange stuff on the court. And JX, please.
At ONTH Sports Lines, where you'll find the link to this show at some point tomorrow, along with other links to interesting sports stories, stats, and tidbits we think you'll find interesting. The article that I could not remember on last week's show, Rabbi, is a really one by The Athletic about Rush rock star Geddy Lee, who is a rock and roll Hall of Famer. He has quite the Hall of Fame baseball memorabilia collection as well.
Glad I can remind
you. If he asked that Babe Ruth's rookie card that's on sale right now, then I would tip my hat to him 100%.
I feel like you've been wanting to fix that for like 7 days, so I'm glad I gave you that opportunity. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye. Have a good night, everyone.